This is a 4-part video that defines social accountability, the 4 pillars of social accountability, issues to consider in social accountability implementation, and the types of social accountability interventions. Social accountability has become central to participatory development approaches focused on the achievement of poverty reduction through good governance. It's a contested concept, but is most usefully defined here as the broad range of actions and mechanisms beyond voting that citizens can use to hold the state to account, as well as actions on the part of government, civil society, media, and other societal actors that promote or facilitate these efforts. There's broad consensus that accountability involves both answerability, making power holders explain and give reasons for their actions, and enforcement, ensuring that poor or immoral performance is punished in some way. In summary, social accountability includes 2 sides: the supply, solution holders, and the demand, civics, mutually existing to ensure the progressive realization of citizens' rights. There are many types of social accountability interventions, but the most common ones include service delivery, poverty reduction, and public resource management approaches. These approaches have the citizen as the primary interest group. For social accountability interventions to succeed, there are multiple pillars, known as the 4 pillars of social accountability, that need to be met for the citizen-driven accountability to thrive. These include organized and capable citizen groups, responsive government, contextual and cultural appropriateness, and access to information. The types of social accountability interventions. 1. Transparency-related. The collection, analysis, and dissemination of information on public policies, programs, and services. Illustrative mechanisms and tools for transparency-related interventions include civic education, awareness campaigns, independent budget analysis, and social audits, for the purposes of service delivery, public resource management, and citizen empowerment. 2. Primarily aimed at service delivery and public resource management, collaborative or joint action involves co-production focused engagement in policymaking and program, or service delivery planning and implementation. The illustrative mechanisms and tools for this type of action include participatory budgeting, participatory planning, citizen provider committees and organizations, for example, parent-teacher associations, PTAs, and community health associations. 3. Compliance-focused action is the monitoring and oversight of public policies, programs, and services in cooperation with officials and providers for the purposes of public resource management and citizen empowerment. The illustrative mechanisms and tools for compliance-focused action include public expenditure tracking surveys, PETs, citizen or community scorecards, complaint handling surveys, service charters, and citizen review boards. 4. Contentious or confrontation action is primarily aimed at citizen empowerment and involves civil society actions that interrogate or contest state policies and actions. The illustrative mechanisms and tools for this type of action include right to information campaigns, street protests and demonstrations, sit-ins, investigative journalism. Issues to consider in social accountability implementation. Successful social accountability interventions require a delicate balance amongst the following tasks: dissemination of accurate, verified, and relevant information, galvanizing and mobilizing citizens, monitoring and evaluation, enhancing citizen oversight of services, and organizing interfaces between citizens and solution holders. A full review of practices on social accountability in Zimbabwe would reveal that, while many initiatives focus mostly on information promotion or mobilization activities, only a few initiatives concentrate on the monitoring of key national government processes and services. Striking a balance in practice between the technical know-how of using specific social accountability tools and political mobilization of citizens is crucial. Interventions which use structured and/or semi-structured tools for monitoring of service delivery, for example, tend to better identify, articulate, and communicate service deficits to service providers. Given the prevailing context, these tools may also, in the medium term, serve as viable routes for accessing service delivery information for problem-solving purposes, serving the interests of both service providers and recipients at the hyperlocal level. While a rigid and technical sound social accountability tool may generate a great amount of citizen feedback and related data in a rather short period, the participation of citizens may be somewhat limited as passive information providers unless their participation is factored into the intervention design. Community ownership and inclusion through collective analyses, reflections, and action must be augmented. The starting point for interventions in social accountability projects should be the nuancing of the diverse ways in which citizenship, marginality, and accountability manifest themselves in different political contexts. In these nuances of political, economic, and social interactions and bargaining processes also reveal the agency possibilities, including identifying the interlocution processes and how they can be supported. The participation of women, people with disability, youth, and other marginalized groups must be ensured by mainstreaming their issues and concerns in the overall framework and practice of social accountability. Interventions which consider these aspects have deeper potential to contribute to enhanced participation of marginalized groups. Therefore, the choice of services and issues to be monitored should be made in such a manner that it encourages the participation of women and other marginalized groups. In the Zimbabwean context, literature and the feedback from studies points to the short-term focus of citizen-driven accountability interventions where social accountability tends to be treated as a once-off event. As an alternative framework, social accountability projects are in fact best regarded as policy and practice experiments in a particular governance environment where the major focus of interlocutors is on establishing core relationships that are required to deliver public goods. These relationships are essential in identifying game-changing actors and leveraging on these actors to drive change over time. Such an approach makes sense considering that currently most social accountability projects tend to be either too localized so that the evidence emerging from them must be presented as a case study or policy in action, or they address only one aspect of a policy issue, for example, education for girls only, making it difficult to influence wholesale policy change. In conceptualizing the alternative social accountability framework, it's important to bring to the fore how accountability can be understood and hence experienced differently in different contexts. Typically, what is called accountability is understood as accountability as responsiveness and not accountability as being answerable for performance against an agreed set of performance standards or accountability as answerability. What would be of benefit is ensuring that social forms of accountability facilitate and inculcate a culture of answerability where solution holders justify and explain their actions and not merely emphasize responsiveness through improved services at the expense of being answerable to their constituents. The 4 pillars of social accountability are key in determining the level of success and failure of interventions in any given context. The capacity of civil society actors is a key factor of successful social accountability. The level of organization of citizen groups, the breadth and scope of their membership, their technical and advocacy skills, their capacity to mobilize resources, effectively use media to strengthen their legitimacy and quality of their conduct and actions, including their internal accountability practices, are all central to the success of social accountability action. In many contexts, efforts to promote an enabling environment for civil society and to build the capacity, both organizational and technical, of citizen groups are required. After all, citizen groups who drive the demand for good governance need to powerfully give voice to their concerns in order to assert their rights to participate in governance. The power of citizen groups and civil society organizations must stand on the quality of their capacity to organize themselves, their partners who are from the sectors and communities they serve, and other development stakeholders. This capacity also has technical and substantive, as well as procedural requirements so that the efficient and effective initiatives in the form of agenda platforms, projects, and programs bring forth the outcomes and changes aspired for. Government's receptiveness to citizens' participation is embodied in the combination of the set of laws, rules, practices, and cultural mores in any given political and economic situation. All these define the actual space for citizens to hold government officials accountable for their conduct and performance in terms of delivering better services, improving people's welfare, and protecting people's rights. Space for citizen participation is opened in government institutions that have reform champions. Therefore, an important part of social accountability initiatives is finding and nurturing those champions from the ranks of bureaucrats, government officials, and public servants. The conditions for social accountability are largely informed by existing contextual and cultural conditions. To a larger extent, social accountability action must respond to and operate within the larger context and framework of a sector, nation, or region. The appropriateness of the social accountability approach, including tools, techniques, and other mechanisms, are determined against political, socio-cultural, legal, and institutional factors. The likelihood of social accountability action succeeding depends on eco-political realities. Is there protection of basic civil rights, including access to information and freedoms of expression, association, and assembly? Is there a culture of political transparency and honesty? Legal, institutional, and social-cultural factors also need to be considered because they can influence the success of social accountability activities. In East Asia, for instance, so-called backdoor channels are important to policy making. To ignore context and culture is to risk alienating local stakeholders. To be sure, context and culture sometimes will be unfriendly to social accountability action. Social accountability action should still be pursued if the need for it is urgent. It should be done strategically, however, with foreknowledge of the environment, the barriers, and the risks. Appropriate what-if scenarios and courses of action should be worked out based on an analysis of political, social-cultural, legal, and institutional conditions. Information is power. Essential to social accountability practices is the availability and reliability of public data. Such data, analyzed and correctly interpreted by competent citizen groups, lies at the core of constructive engagement. Social accountability fails when data and information is either absent or willfully denied. This underscores the need for an unambiguous law guaranteeing freedom of information. Access to information can mean two things: physical access to source documents and their availability in a format that is understandable to users. Because not all information comes from documents, access also means access to people who have the information, such as officials, and know where the information is lodged. One other aspect of access to information is easy retrieval and proper processing. This makes timely and appropriate use of the information possible. For more information, please visit www.samcorp.co.zw. Produced by C.